When it comes to circle for the most part hasn't changed a whole lot. You're able to click and drag and begin drawing the circle. Whenever you're drawing circle, it actually utilizes center draw, unlike box that defaults to corner draw. Whenever you extrude, you're able to press B in order to bevel and roll the wheel in order to deal with your segments. You're also able to press tab and pause it. You can also press shift F and basically flip the shape, and as we can see for this particular shape, it doesn't actually give us a reverse bevel. For example, when we draw a shape with a box and we press B, we're able to press Q and add a Q bevel, and we could even press shift F to flip that bevel. Now when it comes to dealing with both of these bevels that comprise the shape at this time individually, that's where Boxcutter just wasn't optimized for dealing with multiple levels of bevels on the shape level at the same time in its initial design plan, so accommodations will have to be made. However, the best way to deal with that is to just shift it to live, and then from there use HardOps and go into bevel, and from there you can jump your reverse bevel down to one segment and have a much nicer shape. However, if we press D and we jump back over to circle, we actually see that there's now a subtype of circle, and previously I was talking to you about modifier, but now we're actually talking about polygon, which is the new type that builds up circle. If you were to say draw this new polygon type circle out at 32 rounds, for the most part you won't notice anything changing with the behavior of it, and since we're over the 12 vertice threshold, the beveling behavior will be exactly as you would expect. So you can press B, bevel it. However, the added bonus of this new default mode is you'll be able to press shift F and also get a reverse bevel, which is something that's been long awaited. Now, I did a couple of takes of this video earlier where I tried to explain everything that led up to why reverse bevel just wasn't possible with circle and why we had to create this new shape called polygon to get to this point. But long story short, anytime you're using Boxcutter, whether you're alt scrolling through the shapes, if you default to circle, currently it will place you on polygon, which will just simply allow you a little bit more flexibility whenever it comes to dealing with the circle and actually performing reverse bevels, which is a first in Boxcutter. I mean, theoretically, you could draw a box, press B, bevel it, round it, and then press shift F and flip it and shift to live, and even though this one's made of a box, we still was able to make it look just like these beveled circles. So on a technical level, you know, just breaking that down to spoil my own fun, you know, just never think of that whenever I'm working though, you know. So just showing you how easy it is to just press B to start with the bevel, press Q to jump to Q bevel, and then shift F to basically flip the mesh, which activates flip face for these particular shapes at this time. It's just the nicest place that we found to place it. However, we are evaluating different methods of actually dealing with our relationships with bevels and conveying them to users, and so, you know, our future updates should definitely be much more action-packed whenever it comes to us talking about user interaction with multiple modifiers that can occur on a shape level. Initially, Boxcutter was conceived to be kept very simple. Another thing about circle, which we're using a polygon subtype of, is if you're actually using one of these lower counts, like for example I'm using 8, I can shift scroll to get it to something that looks a little bit nicer. We can now press B and actually bevel the edges. So we'll press Q and turn off the Q bevel so we can actually see it, but being able to bevel the individual edges of the circle is something that's been long awaited. I mean, especially whenever you couple this with something like shift T to taper, and we can of course pull our cut in and out as needed to really get a very nice interesting result. So the expansion on circle has been something that's been a long time coming, but I wanted to go ahead and get it in the user's hands so we could start gathering data on where to best go forward with it, and also to find out how well it reflects with the users. So previously I was discussing how you can hold Alt and scroll the wheel in order to scroll through the various shapes inside of Boxcutter. So I'm able to scroll down from circle and go to star. So star is actually the third subtype of circle, and the only one that I found worthy enough to be added to the alt scroll menu. I didn't want to have the alt scroll be waylaid by 3 variants of circle, but basically we need one circle capable of reverse bevel and star. So star is a lot like polygon, where basically whenever you draw, we're able to get additional behavior happening with the bevel. As you see, we're able to bevel the individual edges of it. However, we can also during bevel press Q to activate Q bevel, and we can even press Shift F in order to get a reverse bevel. So reverse bevel is just happening everywhere except Ngon. Ngon's just left out at this moment, but we'll be coming back for it. So if I take a moment to shift this to live, using the bevel modal inside of HardOps, I can actually press C, which will actually unlock the clamping on this and allow me to go just a little bit further. I've been contemplating on whether or not we should add unclamping inside of Boxcutter, but these sort of things would definitely also lead to users possibly drawing shapes that are just terrible looking, which is one of the tenets we try to avoid. So to go over circle again in depth, if you press D, we bring up the pie menu, and if you jump to circle, we see that circle will now default you to this polygon type. The only people who will be missing out on modifier no longer being the default are people who wanted to keep every circle non-destructive for editing, but this is something that we plan to come back in a future update and actually deal with accommodations for and connect it possibly to keep screw or something, because really it was a modifier based system that was more limited, and I'll just go more in depth on that on a separate video. But just letting you know that polygon will let you bevel individual vertices up to a certain number. So to test that out, let's bring this shape in and let's shift scroll till we're at 13. And we see that at 13 vertices, we jump straight to Q bevel, and we can press Shift F and actually get a very nice reverse bevel. And to back that up, let's draw the shape again. And let's shift scroll, roll the wheel down until we're at 12, and let's press B. And so far so good. Let's shift scroll one more time down to 10. And we see that we're able to bevel. So basically, as long as it's under 12, you'll be able to bevel the individual edges as well. However, I wasn't able to find any edge cases in testing to justify being able to bevel 32 rounds of a circle, and it became an exponential bevel add up situation, especially when we got to the reverse bevel aspect, which I feel is much more important to this particular shape than the ability to bevel every single vertex. However, even dealing with it on a very low number, there's just such fun to be had with it. I definitely got to do some content where we actually talk about this particular aspect in depth, because this shape has actually been in conception for over a year. In fact, the work was completed over a year ago for this shape. This is the third piece of simple shape. Wedge was also a part of it, but it's actually been assimilated into every shape as a whole. And then the third piece of it was, what was it? I believe it was taper. No, it was draw line support on everything. So all of these were, and star was part of it too, were comprised of a thing we were dealing with internally called simple shape, and just really figuring out the perfect solution for getting everything in the right place was a great area of contention. Everyone was really discussing and trying to figure out exactly the best position for everything. But in the end, it turned out that, aiming for a more unified solution with our tools and having everything assimilated was a much better solution in the end, because it means that you can taper with Ngon. It means you can use line box with custom. It means that wedge is a modifier happening to all shapes instead of just happening to just one shape. In fact, let's jump back to circle. We draw this shape, and while I'm talking about wedge, we can also wedge this as well. We'll wedge, give it a reverse bevel, press B, roll the wheel. Unfortunately, we need to add the ability to deal with individual bevels. I'm still contemplating the best way to convey that in user experience to people, because, unlike HardOps is able to have menus upon menus and hotkeys galore. But whenever it comes to Boxcutter, we got to figure out an intuitive way that you're able to do it in tool that isn't terribly convoluted. So maybe shift scrolling would allow you to jump between your bevels, but of course that means UI elements would have to be added, which is a whole nother talk altogether whenever it comes to Boxcutter. So as you can see, things can get really complex really fast, but it is something that we're always working on and prototyping. And even though these things don't ever seem to make it to the light of day until they're completely finished, it's definitely something that is happening behind the scenes. So with this shape, it appears to have exposed the inside of this mesh. I believe that's what, oh wait, no it didn't. Sometimes you can't tell. That's why you Alt-V and press E, and then when you have your viewport shadows, you can definitely tell if you're cutting inside of your mesh. But there's definitely something hypnotizing to just cutting out little triangles and repeating them in different places. I mean, with this particular shape, we could actually bring this down here, press H, press D, jump over to box, bring a box out to encompass it, drag this out, place it here, use Control to snap. In that time we actually did want to shift live, but I'm just going to duplicate it in edit mode. And we actually only need these two because I could just duplicate it over like so. And using the set origin tool of HardOps, let's have a little fun. So we will set origin, going from this center point all the way here. We'll press F to use the median, and let's just scale this up. And let's say we wanted to repeat that, so we would just draw a shape around that and extract it. And this shape that has a reverse bevel and a wedge and all sorts of complex business happening, we're able to just draw just trivially without any sort of issue. Of course, we'll need to lower the auto smooth just a little bit to get it to look right, but that in a nutshell is the new circle inside of Boxcutter.